are going to move along to a personal journey of a woman in tech. So it's going to be Journey as a Woman in Tech, My Learnings, but it's not going to be by me. It's going to be by Farhat Nooruddin, who is the VP of Global Delivery Strategy and Transformation at Cognizant, who is also a diversity and inclusion advocate, and as a country head and global leader with over 30 years of deep and diverse leadership experience in information technology, a passion for operational excellence and belief in inclusion and diversity, she drives results in digital dynamic environment across geographies. And our next speaker will be joining remotely, so let's hear it. And round of applause for our next talk.
Thank you very much for the lovely introduction. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you so much. So my name is Farhat Nooruddin. I've been given a great introduction. Thank you. So I'm really happy to be here today and to talk to you about my experiences as a woman in technology. So I grew up in Bombay in India, now known as Mumbai. And I have been very fortunate to have had a really interesting and a free childhood. So I was always encouraged to be independent, to be curious. And my parents believed that a daughter could have the same privileges and education exposure as a son. And they always taught me that I could achieve anything in life. So I studied economics, and then I drifted into IT in the 80s. You know, when computer science and education as we know it today, the IT qualifications, wasn't really established. So it was a very fortunate chance, I think, that allowed me to come into this fascinating world of IT, which has so attracted me and kept a hold on me that, you know, more than 30 years later, it's still very much a part of my career and of my life. So in the days when I started, we did structured coding, we designed our systems, and we actually used punch cards. So many of you may think I'm a dinosaur, but we actually used punch cards, which are now, I think, the machines in the museums. And we grew up doing everything. I was a programmer, a tester, then I managed projects, you know, traditional career moves. Then I did ISO implementations, quality assurance, later moved into client management and then organization management. And in the last 10 years or so at Cognizant, I have built up our European delivery centers and the whole network there. And through that, I've of course had the good fortune to also visit your beautiful city, to visit Riga a couple of times. So when I finished my master's, and I'm going back to this and bringing it up because I think it was a very impactful experience in my life. You know, those were the days before email and internet and mobile phones. And I went out to travel across Europe alone. And that was quite an adventure. And, you know, when I look back on it, I think it is an experience that I can fall back on even today. I got to learn, it taught me really how to be self-reliant, to know people, to understand different cultures, to deal with unknowns, to deal with situations where I didn't necessarily know the language properly. And all of this has helped me tremendously. As I said, I mean, at that time it was fun and adventure for me, but today I look back on it as a very important phase and very important learning in my life. So as you can imagine also that in the 80s when I started, there weren't many women in technology. And there were even less of us who came from non-engineering or non-mathematical backgrounds. So we were quite an exotic species, the few of us who were there at the time. But we were extremely fortunate in that the environment in which we worked did not make us feel different professionally. And that is a privilege that I have had as I have grown in my career, which again is something that I've realized later as I've seen, you know, industry and the world around us evolve. And I appreciate this as being very valuable. So when you look at the challenges in the technology world and you see how it's progressed over the years, I realize more and more how important it is for us to encourage diversity of teams, diversity of leadership. And as we grow today, you know, when I think back of coming into a highly technological and also male-dominated environment as a non-technology person, it was a very interesting and heavy learning experience for me. But it was not just a matter of proving myself to the rest of those around me. It was, I think, almost more a matter of proving I could do it and I could succeed to myself. It was my own self-worth that mattered so much to me. And I had to learn at that stage what it meant to take on challenges, to take risks, you know, to convince myself that I was actually able to do something new and to learn from those experiences and then to soak it all up. And when you think back of how the IT industry has evolved, I mean, we worked largely on mainframes in those days, and we had very structured processes. We designed our systems, then we programmed them, you know, the coding, then we actually compiled them. I think it's a concept you folks won't even know of today. So we compiled them. We were allowed limited number of compilations to get our programs to work properly. And then we had unit testing, system testing, and then came the Unix world, the client-server technologies, which gave us a different perspective. And if I can allow myself to say, it was far more agile than what we were used to doing at the time. And then after that, we moved into what we thought was a very new and very groundbreaking technology, and that was prototyping. That was largely for the front ends, for the end user screens. And that helped us to get far more close to our users. So we were able to understand in some cases, not just from an IT department or from specifications, but actually from the end users, what they wanted. And we could try things out. We could understand their needs and design iteratively. And we still, at the back end, followed the waterfall methodology and the traditional way of delivering systems. But this allowed us a freedom that was very groundbreaking at the time. And when I jump a couple of decades beyond that, and I look at technologies today, and the power of the tools, the frameworks, the platforms that we have, and the ability to work in these extremely agile ways, I find that really, really fascinating. You know, IT departments at that time were separate. They were suppliers to the business. And IT, I mean, companies like Cognizant, like ours, were also, you know, we were external suppliers. But today, technology is everywhere. 2 decades ago, as long ago as that, Watts Humphreys said, every business is a software business. Satya Nadella has echoed this when he says every company is a software company. So with over 75% of an organization's processes, the production, the acquisition, distribution, sales, HR, recruitment, wherever we look, you know, it's all supported by IT and software. So it's fair to say that most companies are software technology companies. If you take the example of Uber, there's a lot of discussion about whether Uber is a tech company or a transport company. But Uber and its value is considered to be a technology company. One of Uber's product engineers is supposed to have said that Uber powers the marketplace through technology and provides apps which let people participate in the marketplace. I thought it was a very interesting quote. But then when you listen to the chairman of Volkswagen, Herbert Diess, he says, Volkswagen is now a software-driven car company. And when you hear Jeroen Thijs, who's the chief innovation and strategy officer of Philips, he says Philips is much more of a software company than people realize. And you can look at so many more traditional companies today that are driving digital transformation and automation to an extent where technology is at the core of powering their businesses. So now let's talk of why IT needs women. Because when you talk of women in leadership and women in technology, it's not just the IT companies, it's everywhere. So the importance of diversity is really everywhere. And we as women can play a very important role. not only has the way in which we work changed, but also in the manner in which we look at and we frame job descriptions and roles in an organization. That's also changed. My colleague Ewan Davis from the Center of Future Work is also speaking at the conference. I forget now whether he spoke yesterday or whether he's speaking today. I think he would be worth hearing. And the Center of Future Work has done some really interesting studies on the jobs of the future. And I highly recommend you read that if you can get your hands on it. Even, for us in the tech world, for us to develop IT systems, there are so many roles apart from standard programming, testing, team managing. Design, for example, is so intrinsically important to everything that we do. It's a fundamental part of the systems that we are developing. And when you think of how we use IT, it's not just in the office. It's not in a department like finance or HR or on a shop floor. We use IT everywhere. We use it on our phones. We use it when we program our ovens at home, right? And in our cars. Our cars are software on wheels. So when you think of the design and the user friendliness that has to go into it, it's becoming more and more important. As an anecdote, every time I get into my car, I've been driving the same brand for years, so I'm really used to everything in it. But so often when I sit in it, I think, I'm not so sure that a woman has had really an important part to say in the design of this interior, because there's so many little things which I need, which I think of, like, the storage, the gizmos, the way in which some of the screen functions are organized, which I feel I would have done differently. And when I talk to my female friends, they say, yes, we agree with you. We would have done it differently. And I just, feel like telephoning them and saying, may I join your design team for a couple of days and give you some female end user feedback? Now, this is actually a role. It's an important role of design. We have a different way of approaching things. We think differently. Quality assurance has always been a passion of mine. So if I take an example from there, I think that our approach to testing and the kinds of things which we spot when we are testing are different. We, as women, tend to be, in my experience, I cannot generalize, this is my experience, we tend to be better at identifying, for example, exception use cases. But the men colleagues I've had have always been more efficient with performance testing. But there is no way to generalize, because you will always find some women who are better at performance testing and some men who are very good at exceptions. But there is no real good or bad. It's just that we come in with different qualities, different strengths. And I think the joint forces of mixed teams is really where the strengths are. And that, brings me to emphasizing yet again the importance of diversity in today's world. We need women in the workforce, but not just to tick the box or to meet a target. Think of, why should we ignore 50% of the workforce, of actually a very important, good, talented, and well-educated workforce? For the simple altruistic reason of having a shortage of talent in the world today, why are we ignoring a strong talent source? When you think of the impact that artificial intelligence and machine learning has in our world today, and the dangers that are there on the horizon of bias, of misrepresentation, of underrepresentation, because we don't have a broad base of inputs into design, testing, or even the continuous monitoring of these systems, that alone is reason enough for us to have really diverse teams. The end user of today, spans generations, at least 3 or 4 generations, and it spans gender diversity, age diversity, ethnicity, because our markets are not restricted to any one geography. In today's globalized world, our markets are global. And the more diversity we have in building our systems and technology, whether an IT company or in-house, the better our solutions will be. And the more diversity we have in leadership and in the thought and the design of our policies and the composition of our teams, the more we are going to encourage people to grow and stay in a company, because it'll just be a far more attractive environment to grow in, to work in, to collaborate in. We will not only attract more people, but we will also provide more career growth, more opportunities to, and encourage people to explore the whole gamut of possibilities that there are, not just follow very strict and narrow career paths. The real strength of the organization and of its systems will definitely come out through diversity and inclusion. So all IT companies, all companies which have technology with them, are really facing a problem of scarcity of resources across the board. And an even greater problem, as I've already said, due to the scarcity of women. And why is there the scarcity? That's what we need to understand and address. It's because a lot of women are not, in many regions of the world, aren't entering STEM education. That's true. We need to encourage more women to enter STEM. And to have a much broader base. But if we take a step back and really think about it, there are also many roles that don't necessarily need a STEM background. So you think of qualities like logical thinking or analytical reasoning, people interaction, empathy, design, end user journey experience, or multilingual skills. These are base skills. And we as companies can enable technology to be learned with proper training on the job experience. And this is where all companies can play such an important role in understanding what the true requirements we are for different roles and what the true skill base is that we need. And we can take, if we do this, we can take in talent from so many different education and skill bases and really train them and tap into a whole new pool of workforce, which we can then grow to our advantage across the industry. And this will enable women to take a leap forward into this really fascinating world of technology and software as it is today. Another reason why we tend to have less women in the workforce is because women either don't join or they drop out at certain stages of their careers because they tend to take on more responsibilities on the personal front, as parents or as carers. But the pandemic has shown us that the flexibility of working, not just in terms of timing or a location, but with remote working, hybrid working, not just being discussed, but actually being implemented more and more in companies, we can use this as a platform to encourage so many more women to join and even to return for those who have left to their careers. And this is an important point that we have to consider in all of our policies going forward. The corporate world at the mid and the senior level is not a diverse world. That's changing. We don't realize it as much because it's changing far too slowly. I have to emphasize that. But what we need to do very consciously is to highlight the role models we have. Women role models, but also role models from other communities, other ethnicities and backgrounds, from differently abled people who are really making such a success in this world. And this is role models not just for leadership at the very top of the spectrum, but all along, because you have growing leaders at mid-levels who are the leaders of the future. And we need to highlight all of these role models to encourage others to come in and have the strength and the confidence to thrive. A couple of things from my own experience, really, on how we can encourage ourselves and build our careers and have the confidence to get to the next level. I think one of the most important things from my perspective is enjoy what you do. Have the confidence in yourself to take on fresh challenges. Don't wait until you have perfected a skill to take on a new role. You will learn on the job. You are as capable as the next person of learning and of growing. Okay, so you'll make a couple of mistakes. Fine. You pick yourself up and you learn from it and you go again. All of us do that at different stages of our careers. So remember one thing, that if somebody has asked you if you want to take on a new role, or you put in an application, they're actually considering your application for that role. It shows that you're already thought of as someone who can potentially do it. So don't fear, believe in yourself. I wanted to be a perfectionist in the early part of my career, and I used to be scared of taking on new things. But now I realize that learning through my experience and my mistakes has been a very valuable learning. The other thing is, of course, you need to find the correct people who will correct you, encourage you, and mentor you through your journey. But don't hesitate to find a mentor. Don't wait for a formal mentoring program. If you think of somebody who could be a really good mentor, approach the person, ask them, what's the worst thing that can happen? They will say that, they won't have the time, or maybe I'll tell you I'm not the correct person, but maybe, they'll recommend somebody else. So go ahead and find yourself a mentor. Find somebody who will help you through your journey, and just remember that you may have different mentors and coaches through different stages of your journey. That's not wrong. That's perfectly possible. I've had the privilege of having some very good bosses and colleagues who have encouraged me and made me take on challenges and who've had my back. And that's something that I feel I really strongly strive to do now for others around me. Another thing I would say is negotiate. Learn to negotiate. Know what you want out of the negotiation. You'll have to make compromises. No doubt about that. All of us do. But go into a negotiation knowing what you want out of it and knowing where you are willing to compromise. That's important. You should know where you're willing to compromise. Don't be caught on the back foot. Another thing I often hear is how women are sidelined in meetings. I can't deny that. It's happened to me often enough. But the chances are, when you think of it, that you've been invited to a meeting because there's a value in it. You've either come in there because there is a learning in it for you, or because you can make a contribution. So be confident. And if you're really confident and know your subject and think you should be on the agenda, try and get on the agenda. And if you can't, during the meeting, don't hesitate to speak up. Don't hesitate to ask a question. And don't give up if you're not heard the first time. Try again. Meeting etiquette is very important, and every one of us can really influence it. We have the ability to help others whose voices are not being heard. I think in the White House, I believe in President Obama's White House, if I remember rightly, this was adopted by a group of women, and after that was called the amplification strategy. Fundamentally, it's that when you hear somebody, generally a woman, who's being ignored, or whose point is being taken and then being amplified and being spoken of by somebody else, you can take up the point and say, as so-and-so said, and give her the credit for the point and bring it back to the table. Give her a voice, give her a platform to speak. There are many ways in which you can change meeting etiquette. And, everyone, it doesn't come easily. And it will certainly not come easily in the beginning, but that's how it starts. And that's how we can make it a part of our culture. And every one of us, when we do it, slowly we will be known as people who will have a voice, who have something to say, and then we don't get ignored. So I've spoken for the last 20 odd minutes, quite a bit about my journey, my experiences, and my views on the tech industry, as well as on women and diversity in the tech industry. I feel really privileged to have been part of the evolution of IT over the last 30 odd years. But what I'd like to really leave you with is that you are the leaders of tomorrow. Technology is going to evolve a lot more. It's going to bring about dimensions through artificial intelligence, robotics, augmented reality, analytics, data sciences, IoT, so much more. And all of this is going to change not just the industry, because our lives, but really our lives, because technology touches every aspect of our lives today. And you are a part of that. You're a part of that from wherever you are in your careers today, because you are a part of the growth. And I really hope that my experiences and my journey has given you some food for thought and has encouraged you to be a part of this. And with that, I say thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you so much for the talk. We actually have a little bit of time, so if there are any questions, I could ask them so we can answer. So are there any? Any hands? I actually made some notes from your talk. And the thing that I kind of took from this all was that our lives are really like this process where we do iterations, where we really just move along and fail and do new experiences and things like that. So the energy was really amazing, and I loved also the point about not having. You don't need an engineering background. You don't need to know how to code to work in tech. There are so many different diverse fields that you can take up, and today we will hear a lot of them. So you will know a little bit more about the opportunities, and if you're interested later on, then as we heard in a talk to look for mentors, Riga Tech Girls has a program, has mentors. So you definitely should need to sign up. So another round of applause for our speaker. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you very much for having me there. Thank you. Bye-bye. And all the best to everyone in the group. Bye-bye.